I might be at the Race World First in sunny Santa Monica, California, but the grind stops for absolutely nobody. And today we got to talk about tips and tech that I've seen in Mythic Plus dungeons and how you can utilize this in your Mythic Plus dungeons. And nothing is a good tips and tech video without talking about the dungeon that has the most tips and tech, Darkflame Cleft. And so Darkflame Cleft has a couple of key points if you can do some weird tech. The first is the first boss. Honestly, Old Waxbeard, he has a charge mechanic. In general, though, this charge mechanic, your melee need to watch out for it. Just in general, it's not like that big of a deal. However, you can actually make the boss cancel his charge ability, which is great. Like, that's going to leave the boss in melee. It's going to allow your melee DPS to have 100% uptime if you LOS him. So you use one of these pillars here, and then you dip behind it right as the last second, right before the cast is going to resolve. The cast is completely canceled, which is a huge deal. It's going to save you a little bit of damage, and honestly, just a great piece of tech. Secondly, the ads that are in this room, these candles, they can be outranged or LOS. Now, they do have a 30-yard range on their outrange, which means that as a ranged DPS, you're able to DPS them permanently with 100% uptime if you just stand beyond 30 yards. This is not even a bug. This is just like the range of the mechanic. And so if you just gently take a couple steps back, you'll be able to actually take no damage from them, which is huge if you pull like 2 to 3 of them. The Candle King. So the pack at the bottom of the Candle King area is a bit cursed. I'm going to be honest with you. It can put you in a headlock, it can stun you, it can catch you in this fire breath, and you can just die. However, you can actually skip this pack by jumping into the Candle King room. A lot of groups on the PTR were utilizing things such as slow fall effects and whatnot, but if you walk all the way around to the right side and then you just jump over that ledge, you can all make it as 5 into the Candle King room, skipping that trash pack that's in front of him. The final piece of tech in Darkflame Cleft involves Hunter Flare. Very rarely used, very rarely even good. Hunter Flare and Darkflame Cleft create safe spots where you don't actually get affected by darkness. So, if you're doing the minecart run and you don't want to actually go and pick up a candle yet, or you're sending your healer to go pick up a candle, you can just drop a flare. In addition to that, the flare can bait mechanics. So on the darkness encounter, if you drop a flare, the beam that gets cast by the boss on a candle can actually be baited onto the flare itself. And so Hunter Flare is very, very valuable. Just in general, it keeps you safe. It makes it so where you can have higher DPS uptime on the final boss as well. So I haven't seen this personally, although I did see it a little bit with spell warding, but I got confirmation from Terrathal that on Operation Floodgate, the last boss, whenever he casts the Giga Zap onto players, if you Giga Zap the first, or if you turtle the first instance of the Giga Zap being applied to you, so it does target a player, and if you're in turtle during that, it casts on you a second time, applying the Giga Zap debuff to you 0 times because you were in that immunity. I don't know necessarily how this works with other immunities. I know it definitely works this way with turtle, so you should definitely be looking to turtle that. That's a great piece of tech right there. So for Motherload, the beginning of this dungeon this season is a little bit dicier. There's a lot of trash at the very beginning that's a bit hard. There's assassins, there's peacekeepers. Both of those mobs are very difficult. However, you can actually skip the first peacekeeper of the dungeon if you walk all the way around to the right side. From there, you can jump on top of these boxes, and then you can jump on a ledge right here, and then jump over the wall, allowing you to be able to completely skip this peacekeeper that Blizzard has put right in the middle of your path. Intended? I think probably not. We had a couple things for Rookery. So first off, the first pull of Rookery, the roof that you can stand on that you see right here, it actually allows you to not have to dodge any ground effect mechanics. There's a frontal from one of the mini bosses that you end up pulling. If you end up pulling this Void Rider off to the side, it does ground effects as well. Both of these things are completely omitted if you're standing on the roof, though, allowing you to have basically 100% casting uptime and making your melee DPS friends very, very jealous. On top of being able to stand on the roof in Rookery, you're also able to get these birds as you're falling down from the first boss. If you use your extra action button, it will gain you a buff, which allows you to do, I think it's around 25,000 bonus damage per second for 5 minutes. And so it's a non-zero amount of damage. You should be looking to get it if at all possible. And it's not like the biggest damage gain in the world, but it's something. So there are mobs in Priory of the Sacred Flame. They're called Templars. They have an ability called Templar's Wrath, and upon calling the Sacred Flame, they become an avatar of wrath and they gain wings. This increases all damage done by 30% for 10 seconds. And this is spell steal off the mobs. And so I think you can see where we're going with that. So you should spell steal that if you have a mage. In Theater of Pain, there's not a ton of tech, but just in general, you're able to speed boost past mini-bosses in Theater of Pain. So if you use an effect such as Windrush Totem, or honestly your group is just fast and they'll have personal speed, or you use Stampeding Roar, you can actually run past this last mini-boss, allowing you to be able to not have to kill it. These mini-bosses aren't the most efficient count in this dungeon. You have to play them by themselves. They can potentially kill people off. By skipping them, that's going to allow you to just have an easier time of completing this dungeon just in general. Let's talk about Imp Dispels, because No video can be safe from warlocks. And imp dispels are very good on a couple of key bosses or a couple key moments. First off, IPA and the final boss of Rookery, imp dispels are great on both of those fights. They put out 2 debuffs at a time. The healer dispels one, the imp dispels the other. It reduces the amount of damage that you take by a ton. There are 2 instances in Workshop of which it's good as well, on the Junkyard Dogs and the Mach 3 bots. So the Mach 3 bots, they put up an arcing zap onto players. If you dispel that with an imp and then your healer dispels the other one as well, again, a lot lower damage, just a lot easier to deal with just in general, especially whenever you have the short out going at the same time. The Junkyard Dogs, they put a Fiery Bite debuff onto you. In general, your healer's looking to dispel those on players at like 2 to 3 stacks if they don't have mass dispel potentially. But if you have the extra dispel from an imp, a huge deal for being able to remove stacks of the Junkyard Dogs dot onto your players. And this wouldn't be Mythic Plus if we didn't talk about some Shadowmelds that were available in the season. There are some pretty good Shadowmelds. The 2 that I think that are the best, though, are the Giga Zap on the final boss of Workshop. If you were able to meld the Giga Zap on the final boss of Workshop, basically what it does is it casts that Giga Zap 3 times. If you meld it once, then it will only have 2 times that's casted. It can retarget you, so say you meld the first Giga Zap of the cycle, it can retarget you on the 3rd, but, you know, this isn't a bad thing because you don't have the debuff, so it's totally fine to meld that. The final thing that's good to meld is the final boss of Darkflame Cleft. You can actually meld the Shadow Blast, reducing the amount of damage that's going to be taken by you by a significant amount. There's also no chance of you blowing up the candle. The Shadow Blast, especially in like higher level dungeons, probably ends up doing about like 60-70% of your health, so not something that you necessarily want to be tanking, but it's not the end of the world, especially in like lower level or pug level keys. Tell us from the future here. I actually forgot about one of the melds. If you go on Darkflame, the first boss of Priory, the Sacred Flame, if you get Savage Mauled on, you just jam meld immediately, and it actually reduces your damage taken by that mauling. It removes the shield off of the boss, allowing you to do more damage to the boss just in general. Okay, so Jack, we're at 7.5 minutes. I need to get to 8 minutes for mid-roll ads. Basically, the premise of the video is we're doing tech for every single dungeon. Do you know any like useful tech for next season's dungeons?
Yeah, I mean, Priory's got the like stands in the like the blacksmith. If you go to the lieutenant blacksmith on the right side,
okay,
with the fire, there's like these stairs that you have to go up to fight at the blacksmith. And then you can go stand on these, they're not like pillars, but they're just kind of elevated platforms. You stand on those, and then none of the fire are going to have any circles on you. Plus, if you go to the right side anyway, you have to fight the guard captain in the middle of the courtyard, the blacksmith on the right side, and then the lieutenant you fight with the boss does no unavoidable damage. It's all just puddles. So if your team can actually dodge stuff, then it's actually the freest boss fight ever.
There you go. That's the 8 minutes that we needed. Thank you. Those are some of the most interesting and most important tech that I have for you for this season in Mythic Plus. Obviously, as the season continues to progress, I'm probably going to make more videos like this as the tech gets a little bit more advanced, as the season gets a little bit more mature, and as we see some more interesting strats coming along. I'm going to continue to release videos talking about VOD runs, some of the most impressive runs of the season, those kind of things. That's kind of what in general the trajectory of my content is going to be. Also, we're going to be talking about tips and just like how to improve as a player. So if you're into that kind of stuff, particularly Mythic Plus related content, go check that out. I'm also casting the Race to World First. So twitch.tv/Team Liquid. If you're looking for Race to World First content, come check me out there, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.